All right, it looks like Matthew Bishop is not here for position number 1 for the Richland School Board. So what's going to happen now is Heather Cleary, who you see here to my right, will give a 3-minute statement. And go ahead.
Okay. Are we ready? Hi, I'm Heather Cleary. I thought I'd give a little bit of background on myself. My husband and I moved here in 1991 when our children were small, and I used to work in advertising for a broadcast company. Our children attended Richland Schools kindergarten through 12th grade, and when our daughter was in 2nd grade, besides volunteering in classrooms, I got involved with the school district bond and levy campaigns. My primary concern at that time was the overcrowded conditions at Badger Mountain. That same 2nd grade daughter is 31 today. So 12 years ago, I was appointed to the Richland School Board. In the next couple of years, the school district will have finally addressed the Badger Mountain facility, which is really quite exciting to me. It may have taken 25 years, but it's finally going to become a reality due to our generous citizens who voted for our bond in February. Yes, I can get closer to the mic. The most notable achievements over the past 12 years include we've implemented full-day kindergarten throughout the district. We developed a program for early learners called Partnership for Learning. We've started a health science academy for our high school students who are interested in a career in health sciences. We started Delta High School. We expanded our career and technical offerings in our buildings. We have started a Communities in Schools program, which we have people embedded into our buildings that help families who are in crisis, and they connect them with community resources in the community. We've replaced and updated almost all of our curriculum in many areas. We've integrated computers in the district classrooms, and soon we should be, it's within reach to have one-to-one computing throughout the district. And we've rebuilt 12 schools and Fran Risch and some other buildings besides just those schools. So every time I've been faced with running for re-election, I kind of take some time and reflect to make sure my heart and head are still committed to this important job. For years, I've always said that our community is only as good as our school system, and I still believe that today. So for all of our challenges, I believe we deliver a quality school system that our community takes pride in. It's been my pleasure to have served for 12 years, and I'm proud of the work our staff does for our students, communities, and taxpayers. We've accomplished much and will continue to do so. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Heather Cleary, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
I just have to get something from my booth.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, you can't.
Oh, he's got some magic in that suitcase, he told me. All right, we're going to move to position 2 for the school board, and I want to introduce the candidates. Ron Higgins to my right and Rick Jansen's to my left. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to start with opening statements. Mr. Higgins, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. My name is Ron Higgins. I've been living in Richland since 1978. My wife and I currently live in the city. We've been here and raised our kids. I have 2 children who've graduated from Richland High School and from the Columbia Basin College. My son went on to get a Bachelor's of Science degree from Gonzaga University and his Master in Business Administration from the University of Southern California. My daughter went on and got her Master's and her PhD in Mathematics Education from Washington State University in Pullman, and currently she is a professor of mathematics at the California Maritime Academy. I am a certificated math teacher in both Washington and California. I've substitute taught pre-kindergarten through 12th, all subjects, including bilingual, quiero aprender español, pero no estudio suficiente, and special education. I've been in 7 different Washington school districts and in both public and charter schools in the inner city of Los Angeles. I've also been a school bus driver. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel from the Marine Corps Reserve. I was a training officer at a Marine Corps Air Station. I'm a Vietnam veteran and was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. School's mission is to produce men and women competent in communication, computation, and civics so they become contributing citizens to our constitutional republic and free enterprise economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Janssens.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name is Rick Janssens. I'm the current president of the Richland School Board, and I am asking for your vote for re-election because I am passionate about what we're doing. I've served on the Richland School Board since 2001. There's a lot of exciting work going on. We have Delta High School that's already going. We started Richland Health Science Academy this year. We are building new schools. We are working hard to address the growth in our community. We have literally hundreds of new students every year, and that takes a lot of detail work in order to find teachers and classroom space to accommodate them all. My highest priorities, if re-elected, are to continue to prepare our students for 21st century skills. I love the opportunities that we're working on providing, and I'm looking forward to things like foreign language training in elementary schools and perhaps some Montessori elementary school. I'm looking forward to working especially to reach those underserved populations of students right now, kids who are low income, who don't have the opportunities that some of the other kids have. We see that they don't produce as well as the kids who aren't low income, and we need to address that. Schools need to work for everyone. I'm also passionate and have worked at the state and federal level and locally to reduce excessive standardized testing. I trust our teachers. I want our teachers to engage students. I want them to get kids excited about learning, and I don't think the standardized tests are the way to do that. And I hit the stop.
All right.
So ask questions.
All right, speaking of that, we'll move on to our question and answer period. Mr. Higgins, we'll start with you. Here's question number 1. The Richland, Kennewick, and Pasco school districts operate the Delta STEM High School jointly. What is the level of your support for STEM schools?
I'm very in favor of the STEM schools. I want science education promulgated to our kids. But I do not want to neglect some of the other basics. The basics that the children need to graduate, to function in their society, is communication, computation, and civics. I have noticed that the civics education of our children is very deficient. I've asked them, like they just said the Pledge of Allegiance. I said, well, what does pledge mean? I get a blank stare. Well, what's allegiance mean? I get a blank stare. Then I'd ask, what is a republic? Another blank stare. I'm not necessarily blaming the teachers, but for some reason, we are not passing this on to the next generation. These are the principles that we need to hold solid to, or we will lose our constitutional republic. By the way, I have substitute taught at Delta High School on a number of occasions, and I am very supportive of technical education of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Janssens.
All right, so the question was about Delta High School, so I'll talk about Delta High School. I worked hard with a team of people to bring Delta High School into our community. It is one of the things that sets our community apart. We've had visits from senators, U.S. congressmen, and a lot of the state senators and representatives to figure out how we were able to work between 3 districts to get that school to serve all of us at the same time, and how we got that partnership and maintain that partnership. Those are the kind of innovations in schools we need to keep students' interest and to build essentially a better future for our community. So I'm very supportive of that, and I'm looking for new opportunities to do that. You will notice that Libby Middle School, which opened this year, is also a STEM school, and they've implemented some different kinds of instruction without throwing out the good that we've had all along. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 2. Mr. Janssens, we'll start with you. Do you think that additional training should be mandatory for teachers who work with students in their classrooms with conditions such as autism, behavioral disorders, and other special needs? Please explain your answer.
Well, it turns out that as part of my role as a school board member, I found that I don't know enough about special education and the diverse needs of all of our kids. So I'm working on a degree in special education and to better understand how our policies impact those kids. That said, the question was about teachers, and we do have those kind of training. We have certificated teachers who have degrees in special ed. One of the things that we can do better as a state and as a district is provide more professional development to our teachers to address those needs, not just for special ed, but we're getting kids who've been refugees from war-torn areas. We're getting kids who don't speak English. We're getting a much higher number of free and reduced lunch or high poverty children. We need to make sure all of our staff are able to identify and address problems there that create barriers to their learning so that we can get to the basic core of what we do, which is teaching and learning. So that kind of professional development, I think we need to continue to support and enhance.
Thank you. Mr. Higgins.
I agree that additional training is needed, but I'll tell you what's even more important than that. That's additional administrative support for the special education teachers. They are absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of paperwork that they have to do. They can't focus on teaching the kids. They've got all this paperwork, all this documentation that they have to do. I have substituted many, many times in special education classes, not only here in the district, but down in the inner city of Los Angeles at Lawton High School for severely disabled children. I have seen it, and I've talked with a number of special education teachers. One of the real drawbacks for getting teachers to go into the special education field is a tremendous administrative burden that they have to bear. And I don't think that's right. Something needs to be done in that area. Also, if a child has behavior issues that are somehow or in some way a threat to the health and safety of the staff or the students, then additional action needs to be taken to sequester that child so that the child does not endanger the other students or the staff.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 3. Mr. Higgins, we'll start with you. This question is from the audience. What subjects and equipment are provided or subsidized by funds from the Richland residents, I should say, and why doesn't the state cover these subjects' funding? So you may not know that,
No, I'm not in there. That's not why I'm running. Let me tell you this about the incumbent. It's one of the things that really impressed me about Mr. Jansen's. Some people came to a school board meeting and said they want some other program, some other, that was going to cost a lot of money. And Mr. Jansen says, well, fine, that's great. Why don't you tell us what you don't want us to pay for? So he has a lot of fiscal responsibility. They have shown the school board has shown itself to be very fiscally responsible. And that's not why I'm running. I'm running because our kids are being separated from their heritage. I don't necessarily blame the local school board. This comes from far above the local level. But we can stop it right here. It's our kids, it's our money, and we can choose what we want to emphasize. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Jansen's.
I don't remember the question.
I will repeat it. It's I'm trying to decipher it a little bit. What subjects and equipment are provided or subsidized by funds from Richland residents? Why doesn't the state cover these costs?
That is a complicated question. The simple answer is that our state constitution requires the state to fully fund, amply fund basic education. What the state funds is basic education, and they've defined that. Things that they don't fund are any extracurricular activities. Any of the sports, any of the buses that we use for that, any of the music performances, that is not considered basic education. To get a little bit further, they also don't fully fund special education, which is required by federal law and state law. Those kinds of things, it's a little messy right now. The legislature passed a whole bunch of bills on the last couple of days of June. I'm not sure all the legislators know exactly what they voted for, but right now we can't get a straight answer out of the lawyers about what we can include in the upcoming levies and what we can't. So we are making the best efforts we can. I've talked personally with Superintendent of Public Instruction Reichdahl to make sure we're going along the right path to figure out how we support the kids that we have without losing ground. I want to gain ground. I don't want to lose ground. And some of the things that happened in June in Olympia were not helpful to public education, but we can work through that. And part of the role of at least our school board is to develop and maintain those relationships so that we can fix those issues that come down from the state or the federal government so we can protect our kids and so we can do as best we can for our kids.
All right, thank you very much. We move to question number 4, our final question. Mr. Jensens, we'll start with you, also from the audience. What do you think most needs improvement in the Richland School District, and how would you go about accomplishing that?
There are a lot of things that we're working on. My number one goal for the Richland School District for improvement is to increase the student learning, the results for each one of our kids. I want to be able to challenge them in what they're passionate about, so every one of those students, every one of those kids, our kids and your grandkids and my future grandkids, if my kids get busy, will have the opportunity to be the best that they can at what they're passionate about, while also producing global citizens and people who are decent people who work hard and who we want as neighbors.
Thank you very much. Mr. Higgins.
Okay, as far as my priorities is to protect the health, safety, and constitutional rights of our students and parents, connect students to our nation's heritage and principles of liberty contained in our founding documents, including the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. And audience members, if you would ask yourself, what are the 5 freedoms in the First Amendment? There's only probably 1 in 1,000 who know that. Well, I can guarantee you, because I was in her class, that Mrs. Leitner's 8th grade government class right here at Carmichael Middle School, they know them. And I was very, very impressed. You have some very good teachers in the Richland School District, and I want to support them as well. We've got to promote sobriety. I talked with a guidance counselor at Ochoa Middle School, and he says this legalized marijuana is destroying our kids. And he's seen the wreckage. He has to deal with it. And I think it's time we took a stand for sobriety. And I'm not afraid to do it either. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We're actually going to, we have time for a couple more questions, if you don't mind. Okay, all right, well, I'll take that as a yes. All right, we'll move to question number 5. Mr. Higgins, we'll start with you. How do you see your role in implementing the laws passed by the state legislature on behalf of Richland schools and public education?
Well, my philosophy is to tell the truth, obey the law, stay within budget, and hold accountable those who don't. Now, in the position of school board, suddenly people are going to start applying that to me. So I'm going to have to tell the truth, obey the law, stay within budget, or they're going to hold me accountable. And I think, well, the other school board members will certainly see to it that I'm held accountable as well.
All right. Mr. Jensens.
All right, so we do obey the law. That's a basic. However, in our society, we have the ability to influence those laws. And I work with legislators in Olympia, and I work with also Representative Newhouse to try to influence what comes down from Olympia and Washington, D.C. Sometimes I'm effective and sometimes I'm not. But the idea is to have a voice and make sure they understand what the impacts are when they pass laws, because the people on the ground, the teachers that I talk with, have to implement also what's done there. And Olympia is a long way away from Mrs. Leitner's class down the hall here. So yes, we obey the law, but the other part of that is we need to influence those lawmakers to ensure that the laws that they pass make sense for our kids and our community.
All right, thank you very much. Move on to question number 6. Mr. Jensens, we'll start with you. What is your definition of a lifelong learner, and what books have you read in the past year? That's a tough question.
Okay, so I guess I would be a lifelong learner because I'm getting another degree, and The books that I've read in the last year, my freshman high school daughter in the back is laughing right now because I read about a book every other day. The latest 4 scholarly articles that I read, this is going to be really weird. Remember, I'm doing a degree and they want me to do a scientific study. My wife's back there saying, don't say this. I've read four scholarly articles on the chemistry of beer in the last 24 hours.
Hey,
but it is for a college class.
That's a good thing.
If there was more to that question, I just
Okay.
forgot what it was.
All right, well, is that your final, that's your final, okay, we'll take that as a good thing. All right, Mr. Higgins.
Yeah, I've substitute taught, as I said, 7 different districts here in Washington State, including the Richland School District. I have been asked by students on 4 different occasions as a substitute teacher to sign their yearbook. I always sign it this way. Schooling ends, but learning never should. Schooling helps you. It will introduce you to things that you wouldn't otherwise come in contact with. But it should motivate you to go out and learn on your own. You know, the internet is a very dangerous place to be, but it's a wealth of information if you know what to look for. I have learned a tremendous amount doing that. In fact, I will encourage you. There are 4 organic laws of the United States, and one of them is the Northwest Ordinance. If you would read the Northwest Ordinance, Section 14, Article 3, about how we were supposed to deal with the Indians and how we sure fell short of that, that would be one very interesting article to read. As far as books I've read, I read one called I Heard You Paint Houses. It was about a mafia hitman who worked with Jimmy Hoffa. And how did he become a hitman? Well, he was in 9th grade, and he was abused physically. I wasn't by his principal. He turned around and cold-cocked him. That was the end of his academic career. And I don't want to see other children academic career end in such a way.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. That's going to conclude this part of the forum. 2 solid candidates here, Ron Higgins, Rick Jansen. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it.